Welcome to Author Intelligence, where writing meets innovation. Hosted by authors Elizabeth Ann West and Stacy Anderson of the Future Fiction Academy, we explore writing and publishing with AI assistance.
So yes, this is Author Intelligence, which we thought we planned this podcast before Apple came out with Apple Intelligence. So I want to say we were not copying Apple's intelligence. Oh, our first word begins with the letter A, so we can just tack intelligence on the other side.
Yeah, we were going for AI, but so we thought of Author Intelligence. And again, this was a couple months ago.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm Elizabeth Ann West. For those who don't know me, I have been publishing since 2011. Before that was an SEO writer in 2007. And I've been using artificial intelligence in my books since 2021.
I'm Stacy Anderson. I have been writing since 2015, 2016. I've been writing with AI for the past 2 years, 2022, written under different pen names because I'm not even the only Stacy Anderson in my town. So it does not help to put out books under that name. It is just way too common. But you can find me online at the AI Positive Author. That's all the usual social.
That is so cool. I have not made all my social AI stuff yet, bedecked out. It's just Elizabeth Ann West. This is the title of the episode. You want to do the honor, Stacy?
Yep, it is. I have a great idea for a novel. You write it and we'll split the profit.
Yeah, we've heard that at every party. Anytime I go somewhere and somebody finds out I'm an author and it's like a big social gathering, there is always someone that's like, I have a great idea for a book. I'll tell you or even better, it's my life would make a book.
Oh, yeah. You should write it. Sit down.
Yeah, because I have just infinite time, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I'm just at a loss of ideas, so.
Said no author ever. But yeah, the reason why we titled the episode this is because working with artificial intelligence, that's really the shtick, I would say. We come with the ideas. If you let the AI come up with all the ideas, it really just is very generic. It's very expected. It doesn't do conflict very well. It's not a human, y'all.
It's going to have heads in a white room talking about a lot of feelings, not a lot of conflicts happening. And there are genres where that work. But most of the time you're going to want all that conflict, the feelings happening with actions, that sort of things. That's what we as the humans bring to the AI most of the time.
Yeah. So the title of the episode is I have a great idea for a story. You write it and we'll split the profits. Now, the great thing is that AI is not sentient, thank God. And it's also it doesn't need a cut of the profits. Like it's a $20 fee if you're using ChatGPT, for example, if you're using the pro amount right now. It's the cheapest little ghostwriter, junior writing partner, writing room that you'll ever have at your disposal.
Yeah. If you use it via API, you're paying cents per 1,000 words.
Oh my gosh. Using Open Router. And we're throwing some vernacular out there. Don't worry. We're going to have our show notes. We'll have links to them and things like that. We actually do run the Future Fiction Academy, and that is also a YouTube channel. So some of these things that we talk about, if we don't get a chance to explain it on the podcast necessarily, you can always find it on YouTube and also in our school. Why do you think, Stacy, that authors need to learn AI?
There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. This is out there. Traditional publishing is using it. Other indies are using it. Other industries are using it. This is only going to get bigger and better. You are not going to get replaced by AI. You are going to get replaced by other authors who are using AI. You can be in one of the two camps. You can learn how to use it and harness it, become a better, faster writer with it, or you can be the old man shaking his fist at a cloud.
I think it reminds me a lot of the arguments that we had at the early days of the indie revolution. And what I mean by that is I learned about e-publishing and stuff listening to Joe Conrad. I was listening to the Be the Monkey, Not a Frog. And he had an adage in there of, at that time, the big fight was, no one will go ebook. It doesn't have that smell. It's not paper. No one's going to adopt it. Mass adoption. Ebooks are going to be a flash in the pan and go away. And we know that's not true. We also know that ebooks also didn't just like wholesale replace paperbacks either. Paperback is still a valid format. And I remember Joe saying that he didn't actually predict that ebooks were going to completely obliterate paperback. And a lot of people didn't, because even though we have electricity, we still all burn candles. If you're in the mood for a candle, flipping a light switch isn't going to satisfy that need for a candle. With the AI thing, I think that there were authors that were replaced by indies in genres because self-published authors could just produce faster. We weren't at the behest of a publisher having to prove it first of all, then put it on the plate, hope that some other author doesn't have another competing book. So you got to be pushed 6 months. The whole traditional publishing process is usually 1 to 2 years. And I know the fastest I've ever decided I needed to write a book, get it done, and publish it was 5 days. What's the fastest you've done?
I would probably put mine in weeks, but less than a month. If
Less
it's
than a month.
out there, I can have it start to finish and up on retailers.
Yeah, and I can remember the years when all this was happening. There were authors at author conferences and author communities that were just stunned at how quickly self-published authors could get a book out. It was like, don't you have to have a committee of people approve? No, no.
I also remember the doomsaying. Just
Mhm.
everybody with a story in their head is going to throw out all this garbage that isn't gate kept or didn't go through a gatekeeper. And just the whole industry is going to degrade into trash or
Yes.
tsunami of crap. And I'm hearing that exact same thing again. And yes, AI does not write great on its own. If I went up to it and typed, write me a novel, it's going to put out a few hundred words of crap.
Mhm.
That's where me as the human has to come in, prompt it, refine it, give it the story that I want. I am the showrunner, the book runner, the story runner for the AI. I give it the arc and the smoothness. It spits out the words. I am not a word machine. I am a storyteller.
Yes. That is, I think, the biggest thing when we were brainstorming this episode. I realized I tell people I don't like writing. I'm good at it. And what I mean by that is I don't like the actual physical process of sitting with my keys at the keyboard because I have an autoimmune disorder, so it usually causes pain. Long session typing. That's actually why I started using dictation in 2014, because I had neck injuries, and pain is a very powerful motivator. You'll learn all kinds of
Mhm.
stuff to avoid pain. I started off with dictation, and I had like how to train your dragon on good old Kindle boards, now Kboard, like the forum post. And I remember a lot of authors struggling to switch over to dictation when that was like the new thing du jour, because they just couldn't wrap their brains around saying the punctuation, doing new line. And for me, that was my thinking time. And then it got to the point that I could walk around and in 12 minutes, I could have 1,500 to 2,000 words dictated. And I'd plug it into the computer and the computer would turn it into text. So I've always written my books in a very technological way.
I tried dictation back in the early Dragon days. Not only could I not get a hold of punctuation, my brain just doesn't think linearly. I
Mhm.
would jump around. Oh, I have to go back in the scene. I have to go forward. Maybe this would have happened. Oh, that should have happened back then. I found actually, not to jump ahead on us, now with the AI, I can dictate just the spaghetti timeline, just the brain dump of all the ideas, and it can help
Mhm.
sort it out, put my ideas, "Oh, that should have happened next. Maybe somebody else should show up, a family friend." And it puts that into a semblance of an order. It smooths out the story arc. And now I have my ideas that were so exciting. They were just like tumbling out of my mouth
Right.
in a smooth thing. And now I just go, oh, that's not what I meant. Change this, change that, tweak it to be mine again.
That's the other thing I think that AI opens up too. We already talked about how AI is crap at coming up with believable conflict sometimes or character motivations. It just doesn't have that really deep level of characterization and humanization to the story. The mechanics are there, and it is very mechanical. Little did she know, very mechanical. But it doesn't have that spark of emotion a lot of times that's deep there, because it can only predict the next word. That's all it can do. It's never actually slammed its thumb in a car door. It just knows the kind of words that people have used in history when they have slammed their thumb in a car door.
Yeah, they've seen how other people have described it, not
Yeah,
how it feels.
not how it feels. And so what I was going to say is that a lot of times the human brain is better at refining an idea than sometimes coming up with it from whole cloth. I make the joke that writer's block is dead. Long live the author, thanks to AI, because I can put crap thoughts inside of AI. It handles the spaghetti logic, like you're saying. It comes up with something. And 9 times out of 10, I go, okay, I like that. But that just gave me a better idea. It really does for me feel like I have somebody that I can bounce ideas off of. And it feels very collaborative, but it's still like a mirror. It's only going to reflect what I stick into it. It's a very personalized collaboration with the AI. The way I prompt and interact with the AI is different than the way you do. So we wouldn't necessarily get the exact same information back out, even if we use the same prompt.
Yes, and I like the idea of a mirror because it will show you from different angles you might not have considered,
Hmm.
but it's not going to make something new. It's not going to turn my hair purple, but it will show me the backside of my hair.
The other thing I think, going back to that mirror metaphor there, I like that I can step into the mirror, so to speak. One of my favorite things to do with AI, because I write historical, is be like, here are the facts of the historical thing. And now you can jump into a point of view of someone. So if you're prompting it and you're like, where I'm in Whitehall, London at the time of Jack the Ripper, and I want you to pretend to be a woman who's working the streets, and I'm going to interview you. And then you interview the AI and it's playing this persona, and it can spark all kinds of different ideas that you wouldn't necessarily think about or synthesize together. Should we do
Yeah,
that? Should we do that?
yeah,
Should
let's go ahead and try.
you wanna do it?
Yeah, we were a little bit torn on how much we were going to jump into on this episode, but we're only going to be able to hold you back for so long.
All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll go to this thing, I think. And then we'll just use ChatGPT to make it easy. We were playing earlier about a comedic post. So I'm just going to click in the top left here, a new chat, and we can go ahead and play with Chat 4.0. What do you think?
Yes, as
Okay.
of the time of this recording, that is the newest model.
It is. It is. So let's go ahead. Prompting, very simple. Do what, how. I am going to interview you, and your persona is a young woman, 30 years old. That's not young by that time period. Let's
No.
make her 24.
Yeah.
24 years old, working the streets as a prostitute in Whitehall. I think it's Whitehall where the murders happened.
I'll look that up while you're typing.
The time of Jack the Ripper. You answer my questions with that persona using historical fact to help color your personality. Whitechapel. I knew it was close to that. Whitechapel. Throw a comment there. All right. So first prompt, here we go. I'll throw that into the show notes. And let's see what ChatGPT can do. Sure, Elizabeth, I'm ready for the interview. You can start asking your questions whenever you're ready. Now you'll notice that it says Elizabeth, and actually we can make it play. Let's see.
Sure, Elizabeth. I'm ready for the interview. You can start asking your questions whenever you're ready.
Okay, cool. I want you to speak using historical vernacular. What did you eat for supper? Ooh, here we go.
For supper, I had a bit of bread and cheese, nothing too fancy. Sometimes I get lucky and find a piece of cold meat or some stew, but tonight it was just the basics. Keeps me going, though, and that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. How did you end up in this profession? Oh my goodness, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna read. I'll let it read out loud.
It weren't my first choice, that's for certain. I came to London looking for work, thought I'd find something decent, but jobs are scarce, especially for a girl like me with no family and no references. Tried my hand at a few things, factory work, domestic service, but the wages were pitiful and the hours long. When you're hungry and cold and there's no one to turn to, You do what you must to survive. The streets of Whitechapel offered a way to earn a bit of coin, enough to keep a roof over my head and some food in my belly. Ain't a life anyone would choose, but sometimes choice ain't part of the bargain.
What do you think, Stacy?
I have the whole backstory for a character coming up now.
Yeah, thanks here too. I'm like, there's phrases there that really touched me. I love that line, choice ain't part of the bargain.
I love that. So my next question would be, why, after you heard about Jack the Ripper, do you continue to work on the streets?
Okay.
And I bet that'll either lead to more backstory or conflict or something.
Why are you still working the streets with Jack the Ripper at large? Do we want to ask, aren't you afraid, or we don't want to?
Yeah, I don't want to lead it yet.
Okay, no leading. So it's writing right now. Go ahead and play it.
It's a dangerous time, no doubt about that. Every woman out here knows the risk. But what choice do we have? The workhouses are worse, and there's no charity for women like us. We hear the stories, see the fear in each other's eyes, but we still need to eat, still need to pay for a place to sleep. We stick together more now, keep an eye out for each other as best we can. It's not just the Ripper we worry about. There's danger every night. But until there's another way, we do what we must. Survival doesn't give you the luxury of safety.
I want to hear, like, how are the workhorses worse than death? Ooh, they're a living death. They're a living hell. So let's see.
Workhouses are a living hell. They strip you of any bit of dignity you have left. The conditions are filthy, the work is backbreaking, and the food is barely enough to keep you alive. Families are separated, children taken from their mothers. You lose your freedom, your spirit gets crushed. It's like being buried alive in misery and despair. Out here, at least we have a bit of freedom. We can move about, choose where to go, and there's always a chance, slim as it might be, that things could get better. In the workhouse, there's no hope, just a slow, painful grind until you waste away. Some nights, when the cold bites and the hunger gnaws, death seems almost a kindness compared to the slow torment of the workhouse. At least out here, there's a bit of life left to live.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So that little bit of characterization work that we just did, I find it's great as a priming the pump. Even if you didn't want to use AI, you can jump into, okay, now I'm in the mindset of a prostitute working the streets and understanding it's a very conflicted thing and that there are other options, but they are worse because there's no sense of control.
Yes. And again, if I just came to the AI with, I have an idea about writing whatever, that could be several different genres right there about Jack the Ripper or during the Jack the Ripper time period. Now I have conflict, I have different settings, I have different ideas. I could take that to a murder mystery. I could take it to women's fiction, like historical.
I got sparked with an idea of a women's fiction, a historical women's fiction. What really clicked me with, we stick together in groups more now. And I was like, oh, okay, now I have ideas of, so they may have tried to organize. And so now I can think of characters, and maybe an older character, and maybe there's a character that finds the groups, cuts into her money too much. So she's on her own, and then she ends up becoming like a victim. And there's lots of.
Yeah. You could go to the workhouses beforehand, how the managers there or whatever weren't as, was the respectable way to live, but showing how much better it is in the new situation.
Yeah. And it gives me places to start for research to go, okay, let me now go look and see if I can find any primary sources of accounts of workhouses. And I know that they're out there. I write historical fiction for, just to reveal, like the 1800s are my jam. And one of the things that I've learned from a documentary, I think it's Lucy Worsley who did it, Dr. Lucy Worsley, always the orphanages, when they would drop a child off at the orphanage, they would take a scrap of fabric that the child was wearing, and they would cut a piece of the fabric and stick it in a book and give the other piece to the mother. And that was how they were going to claim their child back. And so there's these books of fabric swatches. And if the swatch is gone, then you know that child got picked up. But there's a lot of swatches in those books. Like you can just turn the pages and you see these calicos and the cotton and muslin and all these different pieces of fabric. And it's really touching because it's a little piece of fabric, but it means so much more to do with author intelligence. But
I have a feeling we're going to get sidetracked into the world of just writing in general without
yes.
AI.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's the author part, right? Why we work with AI, because it's fun. It is like going to that party and having that annoying person. I have a great idea for a novel. You write it. But it's me who has the idea for the novel. And then I have this tool that can just start writing for me, start making a draft for me, start exploring a character.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you want to play with next? So 4.0 just came out, but let's talk for real. What is the real AI boyfriend for every author who's out there? Who do they like to write with?
For actual prose writing, I know my AI boyfriend is definitely
Claude. Yeah. So I got to see Claude in action early on before he was even in Slack. I got to see Claude. And I really love their company, the Anthropic. They've got some great people. So Claude is by Anthropic as a model. Now, Anthropic are the people who started Anthropic were actually originally part of OpenAI. Drama. I know. Yeah. They do the documentaries about this time period. I have a feeling they're going to like really ratchet up all the drama between Sam Altman getting fired from OpenAI and Elon Musk used to be part of OpenAI. And there's been some shock. But Anthropic's biggest change is that they're a constitution-based AI, which means that it has a set of rules that it has to follow. And why do you like Claude better than OpenAI?
It seems to get the emotion more or express that emotion better. ChatGPT, it seems like it was, or GPTs in general, OpenAI is much more focused on business.
Yeah.
So it's always working towards short, concise, which can be great. It's also much more accurate. Claude, for those of you who have seen Claude go off the rails, its hallucinations are just bonkers sometimes, but that can be great for fiction writing.
Yes.
It's much more emotive, evocative. Again, that leads to purple prose and flourishments, but it does give a lot more raw material to work with for a fiction writer, I feel.
Yeah. And I think that for authors who maybe struggle with emotion sometimes, there's a lot of neurodivergent authors out there. They've been using AI too to be like, here's what happens. Try to give me some examples of the emotional aspect of this, and then using that to actually make their writing stronger. So that now I want to stress here, whenever I talk about somebody using AI, our expectation is that humans who are using AI will always validate what words that they're using, like words that they know they know. It's not like a fourth grader who's pulling a word out of I can't even say it. The thesaurus, and it's some word that they've never heard before or whatever. Melancholy, it's a synonym for sad.
Yeah.
But you can't say, let's see here, trying to think of like a use for sad. What's a slang way to use sad?
Like that outfit looks sad as opposed
Yeah,
to
that outfit looks sad. Yeah. And then, or homework makes me sad. So if the kid's just like replacing words, homework makes me melancholy. No, that's not.
Yeah. Yeah, there has to be a human behind it every step of the way.
Let me go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to share Claude. Now, Claude doesn't have as many features as OpenAI does yet. You can add documents just like you can with OpenAI, but it doesn't have the ability to speak to a ship. So I'll have to read these out loud, or Stacy will have to read them out loud. So let's do like a basic outline. We're going to do a really bad prompt. Do we want to stick with Jack the Ripper, or we want to move to something different?
Let's keep the Jack the Ripper theme.
Okay.
I like the idea of theme in these episodes.
Yeah. So I'm going to say, give me an outline for let's stick with women's fiction, shall we? A women's fiction novel of, do we want to do 20 chapters?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, 20 chapters with a cast of 3 women who are working the street in the time of Jack the Ripper in London. Now, I can choose some different models here. So there's Opus, which is the most intelligent, Haiku, and Sonnet. A lot of us use Sonnet just for the speed of it, but I'll go ahead and use Opus just so that you're seeing the higher reasoning aspect of it. So I'm going to click go. And now Claude is working on it. Here's an outline for a 20 chapters women fiction novel. Set in London during the time of Jack the Ripper, focusing on a cast of 3 women working the street. Introduction to the 3 main characters, Mary, Elizabeth, and Sarah, as they navigate the dangerous streets of Whitechapel. Mary's backstory and her reasons for turning to prostitution. Elizabeth's backstory. Okay, I'm just going to stop it right there. For anyone reading a book that is, here are my characters, backstory. No.
And it doesn't even
right?
say what the backstory is, just a vague backstory.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So this is where like layering prompts can come in. So this entire chat here is a context. So whatever I post here as another prompt, it's going to read what it's already done and take that into context with the prompt. So this matters versus starting a new chat altogether. So I'm going to say that's a boring outline. Make it active and on par with current best-selling historical women's fiction. I want multiple interweaving storyline. Not all characters have to be introduced. And we need a deeper meaning, a deeper story than just Jack the Ripper. The murders are backdrop, not the main story. Go.
And this is also why you can't just get a book of prompts. Like all of us, if you play around with AI, you end up with the Facebook ads, the Google ads, like download my 101 prompts to use for X, Y, and Z. It's not a one and done process almost ever. It's a layering process. It's a changing it's an interaction with it.
So this is already a little bit better. There's still a lot of wonkiness to the chapter here. And like right here, it's got prologue. A gruesome murder rocks the streets of Whitechapel, setting the stage for the Jack the Ripper backdrop. Sarah, a young woman posing as a male journalist. Okay, I'm already more interested in this story.
Yes.
I'd be like, yeah, I want that. And I would combine those things. So now I'm thinking of, ooh, this idea of a woman who is acting like a man so that she can have a job. So it's basically, now I'm getting ideas. Now I'm like, okay, the theme of this story is showing different ways women made ends meet in one of the hardest times for women's rights, like in modern history.
And they would have all been down on the streets, but not necessarily all prostitutes.
Exactly. And so now we already have Sarah, the male journalist, posing as a male journalist. We have Mary, who is the prostitute. She takes on a new client who offers her a chance to escape the streets, but at what cost? Elizabeth, a wealthy socialite who secretly volunteers at a women's clinic in Whitechapel, where she meets Sarah. And I'm going like, how's she meeting the women at the clinic for Sarah? Sarah's there probably investigating. Sarah's investigation leads her to a secret society, ties to the aristocracy, hinting at a larger conspiracy. Now I'm really excited about this because now I'm thinking like, oh, and Elizabeth can get information that Sarah and Mary can't get and things like that. Elizabeth's husband grows suspicious of her activities, threatening to expose her secret life. Again, this isn't enough for me to write the story. For some people, it might be. They could start with this and then they want to layer in more information and everything like that. But I would want to do like for me personally, I'm a plotter, so I would do a deeper dive and have each individual see.
And I'm a bit of a plantser in between. This would be enough for me to start, but then I would start back and forth with the individual chapters. Okay, chapter 1, I still need to know X, Y, and Z. I would go back and forth, get my ideas right chapter 1. Okay, now we need to look at chapter 2 and work like that. And both ways can absolutely work.
Yeah. Now, I would say this is more engaging and multi-layered storyline. Now, this is interesting because I called it multiple interweaving storylines in my prompt. You want to pay attention with the AI starts using vocabulary in its response. So Claude is calling this a multi-layered storyline. So that clues me in on future prompting. I need to ask for a multi-layered storyline, not an interweaving storylines. Does that make sense?
Yes, because you and the AI might mean the same thing, but if they have a different word for it, or it has a different word for it, unfortunately, you're going to have to learn the AI's vocabulary and vernacular. Just like we have an idea of what a cliffhanger is, Claude has a different idea of what a cliffhanger might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are very different models. Like they do different things. This outline gave me here just the 20. If I do this exact same prompt in OpenAI, let's see what happens. So I'm going to copy this prompt. But when I come over to ChatGPT, So we're back in ChatGPT, and I'm in that same conversation where we were doing the interview of the persona. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the methodology that is called chain of thought. I've already put the AI in this conversation in the mindset of having this persona. And so now I'm going to say, please be a writer's assistant. So I'm changing the persona. And then I'm going to put that same prompt in there that I had in Claude. Give me an outline for a women's fiction novel of 20 chapters with a cast of 3 women who are working the street in the time of Jack the Ripper in London. So I'm going to give that exact same prompt there. And you'll see that OpenAI with the exact same prompt does a completely different tack, a different way of doing it. Now we actually have the characters defined where it's letting it go.
Yeah, it's not just that the outline itself is different, it's that even the way it sets it up.
Yep.
It seems OpenAI needs to know that cast of characters in order to create the outline.
So I'm going to press play.
Title, Shadows of Whitechapel. Out. Cast of characters. 1. Annie Turner, a resilient and resourceful woman in her late 20s who acts as a maternal figure to the other 2 women. She ended up on the streets after her husband died in a factory accident. 2. Lizzie O'Connor.
I'm going to stop it right there. There's a lot here that I could unpack and play with.
Yes. I was just even thinking late 20s and acting as the maternal figure. What would lead her to be the maternal figure?
It's not like she didn't have kids. She couldn't have kids. Like now I'm like her husband and her struggle to have children. He had the factory accident. There's no more family. She's destitute. Or maybe there was family. They don't like her. So they didn't give her any money.
Or maybe it's a kind of Les Miserables thing. There is a kid. She is somewhere and she's using all the money to support that child.
And now I'm bringing in my fabric detail that I know about the orphanages.
Yep.
And it does make sense that she'd be maternal in her later 20s because the other 2 characters are 18 and 20.
Yep.
So we have an Irish woman who escaped an abusive father. And then we have Mary, who's timid and naive, who was orphaned at a young age. And so basically I would have that this ties into your idea here. So Mary could be at that same orphanage that Annie's daughter's at, but Mary's now 18, so she got kicked out.
Oh, yes. And with nothing else to do, she could go back and either work a factory. She might have even tried to work a factory job of the workhouses. That might be where the orphanage set her up with and decided the streets were better.
Which goes back to the characterization back here where it was telling us that the workhouses are worse. So yeah, this is really helpful for me personally for brainstorming and coming up with all these ideas. And so prior to AI, this process, of course I could do it I wrote books before AI. You did too.
Yeah.
How long would it take you to ruminate, let ideas marinate and things like that?
It would take a while. Like I need to talk it out. And I would try talking it out with my husband, but bless his heart, maybe they want to win $1 million. And that was his plot line for everybody wants to win. Poor guys. That was his whole idea for every book. So that was not helpful. And then as helpful as my writer friends are, unfortunately, everybody has lives and can't necessarily sit down and just brainstorm my book for an hour or whatnot.
Yeah. I find I get a lot more creative things done with AI in a faster period of time. Like it almost feels they talk about like getting into a flow state or something like that. I can pop into that with AI very quickly now, which it took a while for that to happen. I would say like the first couple of times I was using AI, the first couple of months and stuff, it was clunky, but these new models are so great. I'm a little bit annoyed that those of you who are just now coming into the AI world, you didn't have to work with 3. You didn't have to work growing pains. Yeah. So once upon a time, y'all, these models could only handle about 2,000 words. That was it. And even that was a lot. Like earlier models could only handle 1,000 words. And that was your prompt and your output. And like they were even smaller before then. And when we started the Future Fiction Academy, we were mostly working with models that could only write a few hundred words at a time. So you were having to like loop them together. Even the first GPT-4, I would say it was topping out at 800 words. I can remember those days.
And this definitely warrants probably a whole episode on itself. But Yeah, the context window and how important that is
Mhm.
to being able to brainstorm like this. Like, I would have to wait until just the idea hit me in the shower or something, where now I can guide the process along to happen almost on schedule. Like, as silly as that seems, I can schedule my inspiration or my muse to come because I'm doing that working process with these bigger context windows.
So let's go ahead and finish up with kind of something that, like, what is always the big scary thing for people. So I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to come back to that. Here's the thing that is like super cool right now. And it's just the reality. It's the reality that we're living in. Not all the authors like it. I understand that. So this particular chat in Chat GPT 4.0, we have interviewed a character and played that persona. We have an outline. And now I'm going to say, write me 2,000 words for the first scene of chapter 1, focusing on the character of Mary. Write in third. I think we should write in first person, and I would change the point of views here. Okay. First person point of view from Mary. And let's see what it says here. So, harsh realities. We are going to, the scene begins with Mary fingering the piece of cloth that she would use one day to reclaim her daughter that's at the orphanage.
Annie's the character with the daughter at the orphanage.
Oh,
We just
sorry,
changed
that's what I
that.
meant. So we're going to start with Annie at the factory. The scene should be active with lots of dialogue, bit characters, and you can use flashback. Go. Let's see what it writes.
Now, this is the time to point out, me and you know it, but 2,000 words means absolutely nothing to the AI.
Yeah, it
doesn't
didn't count.
It can't count. It will give it, see, if you ask for 300 versus 2,000, you'll see a difference. It knows to write shorter or longer, but don't expect it. Even at the end, a lot of times it'll tell you, I wrote 1,792 words and it wrote 800. Like, it just does not know words.
Mm-hmm. Already, I can see right here. It's a little bit not great. And we're going to have other episodes to talk about how to do better. This is where a lot of people come into this and be like, AI sucks at writing. And this is not great writing. There's little pieces here that people could use. And I already saw a couple of things. So it didn't finish. And I would just say, continue generating. Let's see how many words it wrote. So I can highlight that, right click, word counter plus. It wrote 1,500 words. Now,
and we'll keep going.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and say continue generating and see if it can get to 2,000. When we say it doesn't mean anything, they're trying to make the models understand. So this might actually hit close to 2,000 words. This is a newer model. This model is only a few months old. The older models, like if you ask 3.5 or something like that, they may not understand how that works. So I don't think it's 100. So let's see how many words we have here. Oh, 1922. So it got pretty close.
Got pretty close.
Yep. And we're doing the thing about the fabric. So it understood that right away. One day I promised myself I would get her back. One day I would reclaim her. Yeah, this is not a great start. I would really want to beef that up. Now, it did decide to try to bring all 3 characters in at the very beginning. And so we have Lizzie, all red hair and sharp tongue, who had somehow become like a sister to me. I'm here, Lizzie. She hurried over. Did you hear another girl's gone missing? They're saying it's the Ripper again. Now, this little line actually makes me excited because I immediately started thinking of like, oh, I want to go back and work on my outline. And there's disappearances and it has nothing to do with the Ripper. Does that make sense, Stace?
Yeah, it does. And that's
Mhm.
also where the context window comes in, where you have to be very cognizant of it, because I think we were talking about Jack the Ripper. If you suddenly decided you wanted it to be about Jack the Ripper to be a red herring or something or other, you'd have to be cognizant and tell it to disregard this or to change direction or to start a new chat.
And then it is picking things up. This is that chain of thought. Remember earlier in this conversation, the character, when I was interviewing the artificial intelligence character, she said, we all stick together now. And so that got turned into a bit of dialogue right here. They ask who's missing, and Lizzie says Mary Jane Kelly. She was seen last night and now she's gone. Ain't nobody seen her since. We've got to be careful, Annie. He's getting bolder. This line right here, I nodded, my mind already racing with plans to keep us safe. We'll stick together always. No one goes anywhere alone. Understand? Lizzie nodded, and I could see the resolve in her eyes. We'd faced danger before and we would face it again, but we would do it together. The AI loves, we're going to do it together. We're in this
stand on the beach, staring hand in hand into the sunset.
Yep. So right here, as an editor, as we walk back to our usual spot, no AI. I get it. Thank you for putting that placeholder, but that signals me as the author, I need to describe what's their normal spot, right?
This is also interesting because we've written it out of order. We didn't write the prologue yet.
Nope.
And now we have a lot more information for our prologue. We have what happened, that it did get out, the name of the victim.
And this right here, I want to write that. I want to take this out and I want to write that scene. That is actually a really good flashback. William had kissed me goodbye that morning, promising to be home in time for supper, but he never came. I think that whole scene, again, this is just, you can use AI just for the preliminary kind of, it's almost like sketching in a way.
But you can also use it for the refining process. You could pull that line out. Great. Ask the AI. Now let's write this flashback as a full scene.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Yep. But you have to be the human that recognizes that and pulls it out.
Write a full scene for a flashback of this part of the story. Showing, not telling. And I'll put a colon. And there we go. So now it's just going to write some more stuff. And it actually wrote it like a flashback, so I can change that. Oh gosh, morning love, morning William. No, it'd just be morning love. Yeah, and it didn't do a whole lot. He smiled one last time. I need to give it more information. This is what happens when you do a prompt that's just very basic like that. This always works better with beats, and we'll talk more about that, like actual more information. One of my best ways to prompt is if I'm going to have it do something like this, even that first chapter, I would tell it to make a plan and now write the chapter. And I think we're talking about that next episode.
Yeah, next to the one after, we'll definitely get to it, though.
Yeah.
That is my current favorite process right now. I get all the ideas, I get the characters, components together, make a plan to write the scene, make a plan to edit the scene.
So what ChatGPT actually did, I noticed this, it actually wrote it so that I could insert it where it was. In the original, after that part that I highlighted, let me go up to the top here, where we have, as we walk to our usual spots, she has a flashback, and then it goes to the dialogue. Annie, you're drifting off again, Lizzie said, nudging me with her elbow. You've got to stay sharp. When I asked it to go ahead and expand that basically into a full flashback, it did actually write it. And then at the end here, Annie, you're drifting off again. Lizzie's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. I know, just thinking, we've got to stay sharp. So it even understood that, oh, she wants me to expand this into a flashback. Let me make sure I have the bookends pretty similar too. So you know exactly where it would insert.
Yep. So you can cut and paste that right in.
Yep. But the big thing is that we were just messing around for a couple of minutes here, and all together, I'm going to add this up.
Over 3,200 words.
A raw draft that we could start playing with.
Not finished, polished,
No.
but rough first draft.
Absolutely. So I think that's the key about author intelligence. We talked about this. It's really a productivity tool. Most of us would be over the moon to have 3,200 words with a click of a button that I now go over, and most of us like start changing it, making changes to it, and everything like that. It's really good scaffolding. All right. Thank you for listening about author intelligence. Each episode will have different topics that we talk about. Today, we really wanted to just focus on kind of the brainstorming element, or just the writing assistant component of AI. That this thing, it is like I have a great idea for a story.
Yep. You write it. I'm just going to throw ideas at you.
Yes. And it's a really cool tool that's out there productivity wise. We've had some different test balloon court cases stuff starting to go through the system. We won't get into all of that right this second, but Elisa Shoup, I do want to mention this. Elisa Shoup just received copyright earlier this year for the selection and arrangement for AI generated words. So there's a whole Wired article on that, but the U.S. Copyright Office is issuing copyright for the selection and arrangement. So it's just like a derivative fiction standard. Your words are copyrighted, and then the actual like arrangement of the AI words, because they're public domain, is also your copyright.
Excellent.
Yep. With that said, go get your accounts and start working with the robot.
See you next week in the next episode.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Author Intelligence, brought to you by the Future Fiction Academy. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or better yet, share it with another writing friend. Stay creative and see you in the next episode.